Memphis, Arkansas. Today, the chapter continues to make an impact by focusing on Alpha's national community outreach initiatives such as My Brother's Keeper, A Voteless People is a Hopeless People, Go to High School, Go to College, Project Alpha, Boy Scouts, and the March of Dimes. The Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is committed to Alpha's mission of developing leaders, promoting brotherhood and academic excellence, while providing service and advocacy to the community. More information about the Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is available at MOL Alphas on Facebook or via email at molalphas@gmail.com.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
All right, welcome back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We are speaking with Mr. John Street, who is the current City Council member of Craighead County. Good morning to you, Mr. Street.
Good morning.
All right, so I'm going to get the camera set up here in just a moment so that people can actually see you. All right, so, alrighty, here we go. All right, so we're going to start out with just a brief introduction of, just who you are, what position, and what made you decide to run again for this position.
Well, my name is John Street. I've been on the council for 16 years. I've enjoyed serving the citizens of Jonesboro over that time period. Prior to that, I guess I've always been in public service one way or the other. I retired as a major from the Arkansas Army National Guard with almost 22 years service. Spent most of that time here in Jonesboro with 875th. We were talking about that a while ago. I served 10 years on the school board at Valley View. After that, I coached Little League Baseball from T-ball all the way through high school. I served on the MAPC here. In my profession as an appraiser, I helped write Arkansas's license law and was appointed by the governor to serve 3 years on the Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board. That's the equivalent of the Real Estate Commission for appraisers.
Okay.
I then was asked by Mayor Brodell to serve on the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, and I was glad to serve on that. And I ran for City Council, was successful in my bid, and have been there 16 years. And on the City Council, I've been on Public Works the entire time I've been on the council, 16 years. I've served as chairman 12 of those years. I've been on the Finance Committee for probably 15 of the 16 years I've been on the council. I've also served on Public Safety and Public Service. I chair the MPO, or the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. I chair the Policy Committee. It's now Northeast Arkansas Regional Transportation Authority.
Okay.
And we're kind of a liaison between all of the city governments in Craighead County, the county itself, and the Arkansas Department of Transportation. So we visit with them. We've also got representatives there from the Federal Highway Authority. We have representatives from Burlington Northern and Union Pacific Railroad. We also have representatives from the Superintendent's Association here. We try to, and JETS.
Okay.
We try to reach out to about everybody who needs or wants to have input into transportation. I've also I serve on the board of directors of City Water and Light. I've been on that for about 11, going on 12 years. CWL plays they get very low keyed, but that's owned by the citizens of Jonesboro, and they help with the quality of life. Our rates here are the cheapest in the state, have been forever, and we're in the top 2% of the cheapest utilities in the United States of America. Now, people who live here kind of take it for granted. They don't know, but anyone that comes here from somewhere else, believe me, that's the first thing they'll tell you is, my gosh, I can't believe how cheap utilities are here. But we're blessed to have CWL and the forward thinking of the people that have always been affiliated with them to provide, some of the cheapest utilities in the country. It leaves more people money for other needs they have, city and individual households. Also, the dependability of the utilities and the quality are just excellent. And it's a great industrial recruitment tool because like Nestle, when they came here, I know I was working something at Christmas, one of the food deals, and the manager was working that as well. And I asked him, what made you decide Jonesboro over, I believe it was Knoxville, Tennessee? Okay. And they said, well, there's a lot of things. The quality of life was good. The level of education here with ASU and the local schools was excellent, but that's a big concern for them and their employees. But he said it wasn't the only factor, but the utilities. He said the utilities here were $500,000 cheaper annually than they would have been in the next city. And even to somebody like Nestle, and that's the largest company, the largest factory they have in the world right here in Jonesboro. And they've expanded it several times. So it does make a difference on industrial recruitment. That and the availability of water. If you look in the western part of the United States, a lot of those, Colorado and some of those states, water is a very scarce resource.
Okay.
And so they actually are looking us up. I think that's why we've got a lot of the food industry, because of the availability and the quality of our water. I've also been a reserve police officer with JPD for the last 17 years. Stay active in the community there, and I know Chief Elliott. He's an awesome guy. I think we've got a super chief. He's great to work for. He's very proactive in the community, and he does a great job. I love working for him. I worked for him when he was second shift. Usually I'd work second shift.
Okay.
So I've got a lot of respect for him, and I think he's a great chief, and he's a great leader in Jonesboro. And recently, the mayors of Craighead County appointed me to the equalization boards for Craighead County. So I have a pretty full schedule, but I love it. I love working for the people of Jonesboro and citizens. I love the interaction. I love making a difference.
All right, so I'm going to get right into some of our talking points. Some of them you have kind of hit on, but I want to ask some more general questions concerning the quality of life. And I want to go into JET first, because that's one thing that's near and dear to me. And from an outside perspective, I have ideas, but because I'm not on the inside, I don't know the reality of what can be done. My question basically is, well, I know that the money that funds JET comes from a federal source. And so who is in charge of submitting a proposal to increase or extend services? Just say such for Sunday, or if there's a special event, community event, and people would love to go, but it's after the normal running hours. So who's responsible for submitting a proposal, and what role does City Council play in helping to solidify a decision?
Well, Michael Black is the director of the JETs here in Jonesboro,
Okay.
but the Arkansas Highway Department, and through the Federal Highway Administration, that's where the funding comes from for JETs, and then we have a local match. In fact, we worked hard and just did implement Saturdays. That was a big request, and I pushed for that. In fact, JETs, they tried several times for us to have a transportation facility here in Jonesboro. And I know Flo Jones was very instrumental in that, as was Mr. Hummelstein, Lee Hummelstein. Mm-hmm. And they came and it was rejected, and they came and it was rejected. And they worked very hard and tirelessly as individuals to do it. And I know when we were considering adopting JETs, Flo Jones called me. And if you knew Flo Jones, you couldn't say no to that lady. And I actually cast the vote that made the determination for us to go with JETs. Now, we did it initially on a 5-year, because you had to sign up for 5 years.
Okay.
But we did it under the condition that at the end of 3 years, because you have to have some time for people to transition away from it if they're depending on it.
Okay.
But you had to say 5 years to be, or you'd have to pay the money back.
Okay.
So at the end of 3 years, we put it on the ballot, and it was overwhelmingly supported by the voters. And it started small, but everything starts small. You can't start instantly and have a transportation system like Memphis or Chicago. And it is money. It's funds. If we had the funds, we could run it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, but that's not reality. We work hard to get what we've got. We've expanded the routes. They fine-tuned the routes so they serve more people and go places they want to go. There was a big demand for Saturday service, and we just did get that implemented not long ago. Mm-hmm. Again, funds. But the ridership is up considerably, but the federal government is the one where the funds come from. There's no other source other than the federal government and through the Arkansas Highway Department, and then the city's match in funding that. So we're kind of stretched as hard as we can go right now. If there is some special event, that could possibly be worked out with JETs to provide that service. But again, we're growing it as we go. We're trying to expand the ridership, and as more people ride, I think we qualify for more funds, more buses. We can expand the system, but ridership's key to that. And I remember when we first got into it, and I went down to Little Rock. We had a meeting at the Arkansas Highway Department then, but we had a meeting, and they were explaining the system of public transportation to us. And they said, believe it or not, the hardest thing is not going to be getting all this set up and going. It's going to be building your ridership.
Okay.
And I couldn't believe that because I thought, well, if I needed transportation, I think I'd be out there on it. But they were right. It took a long time to get the ridership up, but it's getting there and it's expanded all the time. And if you talk to Mr. Black, I guarantee you he'd tell you that he'd love to have more buses, more drivers, more riders. It's another thing. It's hard to get drivers.
Okay.
He came to us before, and for some of these things you have to have part-time drivers, and he said it's very hard to get and keep drivers, especially part-time, because most people are looking for something more permanent. But that's been a challenge for him, and I think he's done a really good job trying to meet the needs. And I'm tickled to death with our Saturday route. Now, it'd be great if we had a Sunday route. And maybe sometime in the future we'll be able to do that as our ridership expands and the use justifies those extra time spans through there and gets us more money. But the majority of the money is federal money.
Okay. All right. So let's.
On your question, there is a JETS committee, and anybody that it's open to the public.
Okay.
You can access that. They're always looking for input from the community on the ridership or anything that affects JETS. And we have a representative on the policy committee. There's people who represent JETS on the technical advisory committee of the MPO, and they have a lot to say about that. But they're always looking for input from the citizens. They conduct surveys. It's getting the word out on that is probably the hardest thing. We survey people on all kinds of things or try to get input. Erica Tate, who's our full-time director of the MPO, she'll tell you it's a struggle to be able to get input back from folks. But there is a JETS committee who do make recommendations. They listen to people in the community. They hear their requests, their needs, their wants. They carry that forward to the committee and make those recommendations. And if it's feasible or it's something they can work on, they actually try to like Saturday routes. Yeah. They worked on that. They listened to the community. There was a demand for it. They pushed for it. And as the funds became available or you could justify it, it was implemented, and I'm tickled to death about that. So, maybe we can expand it more, but you can get on the website too. Anybody can get on the website or they can call. And if they can't find it through the city website, jonesboro.org, they can call Miss Erica Tate at the Jonesboro MPO, and she'd be glad to get them connected with someone to express their concerns about public transportation.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to housing. We know that there are several new developments all around town, and unfortunately, some of them are not as affordable as they used to be. I live on a particular side of town, and I've seen a lot of change. Growth, positive, yes, but at the same time, it has pushed people away that have lived there for, say, 15, 20 years because now they're in search of more affordable housing. What role can the city council play in having conversations with investors to say, okay, I know you want to come in, not investors, developers. I know you want to develop this property. However, can you consider pre-existing developments and making them still affordable, or putting things in that are still of good quality that are affordable, so that you're not pushing people out and pushing them into other pockets of town, which can also increase crime, which is conversations we've had with the police. When you push people to a certain area, you create a strain, and when that strain grows, then so does other things. So what role can the city council play?
Well, about the only thing the council can do, because housing is market driven. We do have a land bank. We did organize and start a land bank. I went to Little Rock with some of the city officials when we went down to one of their land bank meetings when we were considering adopting a land bank.
Okay.
It looked like a good program. So we did, in fact, pass and adopt it. It's just been set up. They're kind of in their infancy, but they're working. Now, down in Little Rock, it took 10 years, they told me, for them to be where they are now in the impact. In other words, just because you start it, you don't see an instant result. It's a long process, and it's involved. But basically, housing is market-driven. The only thing that we can do on a citywide is possibly offer incentives to developers in certain areas to encourage them to develop there. Maybe ease some of the restrictions. The cost of housing, number one, is a lot higher. The average cost of a new home, or what you call a starter home, and it's really not affordable based on our median incomes, it's about $152,000. And you're talking about a 1,250, 1,300 square foot house on a small lot with a tiny 2-car garage. So as those houses go up, the market does tend to steer people to rehabbing older existing homes.
Okay.
And that's happening some. It may not be at the speed, but a lot of the people that are doing that also are buying them to rent, because the rental prices here in Jonesboro are kind of like everything else. The more demand there is, the higher the rent. And our rent prices are kind of up. But you have a lot of younger people too that they're not really into home ownership yet. They I guess that's not one of their primary goals. I know as a young man that was one of mine, because that was just kind of the period of time. The young people today, a lot of them would rather rent. They don't want a yard to maintain or a house to maintain. They're very active with their lifestyles, and at this point in their life, they're not looking to own a home. Eventually they will probably. But I think that as you look around town, and I'm a real estate appraiser, I've had a real estate broker's license since 1980, and I've been a real estate appraiser for over 3 years. So I have my pulse on the market, and it is market driven. But you have people who rehab houses pretty regularly. Now, when you take an older home and rehab it, it's less than the cost of a new home. But some of the zoning restrictions that we have, some of the requirements for development here, they don't have them in Bono at the same level. They may not have them in Brooklyn. They don't have them in Lake City, Truman. The land's more affordable. It's cheaper to develop there. So a lot of the newer entry-level homes are not in Jonesboro. They're in the surrounding communities that have easy access to Jonesboro now. But if you'll look, Bono is, and they're all bedroom communities, Bono, Bay, Brooklyn, Lake City, even Truman, 15 miles down the interstate, and they're home and they're back. And it is a market, so it is competitive. There are advantages to living here that you don't get if you live outside the city. Again, we talked about CWL and the affordable rates. Well, they're paying considerably more for the utilities if they don't live inside the city of Jonesboro. They don't have Class 1 ISO rating for fire protection, so their insurance is about twice what it is if you live in the city of Jonesboro. The quality of life, all of the services and goods that are provided citizens of Jonesboro, they don't necessarily have them. So, you know, if you're in the market, you have to weigh out those things, and I think Jonesboro competes fairly well based on the positive things that we have. But again, it's market driven, and the city isn't in private business. The things that we can affect, we're trying to, with the land bank, to rehab older existing homes or take vacant lots and turn them over to Habitat for Humanity or other services, even developers, to encourage them to go back and backfill older communities. We've eased the restrictions on the zoning, on the lot sizes. They were 60 feet. Now we've got a zoning that allow people to go back and build on that or less, which is less than what the current R1 zoning was. But it's in an effort to go back and backfill and allow homes to be built back into some of the older neighborhoods and make them more affordable.
Okay. All right, so I want to move on to another, I guess, topic. Just kind of lost it for a moment. Let's talk about, go back to quality of life. Now, hopefully the other question will pop back up the way I had it in my head. But we've talked off air about sidewalks and making things ADA accessible. I know some of the process, but there are individuals that get frustrated with not seeing things happen in a timely manner. You mentioned that before. Things don't happen overnight. I know sidewalks have been a big issue. Okay, my question was, it was about, even though you represent a ward, you still make decisions for the whole city.
Absolutely.
So have you had the opportunity to drive around to the different areas to see what some of the needs are outside of your ward?
I'm all over the city all the time, and as when I'm out patrolling, I work every area of the city. But as an appraiser, I'm also out and about all over the city. But as a city councilman, I'm out and about all over the city. And yes, they do. But I don't think we're ward driven. If somebody calls me and they say, "Well, Mr. Street, I think that you're my councilman," I said, "Do you live in the city of Jonesboro?" And they say, "Yes." I said, "Then I am your councilman." Don't pay any attention to wards. If someone lives in the city of Jonesboro, I am their councilman, and I will do whatever I can do. Although a lot of people think that we are powerful people, and we're really not. We can connect to different department heads to address their problems. We can go look at them and get the department heads to come out and take looks at them or something. We can intervene for them, but outside of actually sitting in a council meeting, I have no power at all. I can't call anybody down at the city and say, you go do this. I'm nobody's boss. The mayor runs the day-to-day operation of the city and all of the staff, but we do make laws and legislate, and we can bring attention of problems throughout the city, which that's part of our job, to the mayor and different department heads. But that's how it goes. There's a chain of command, and if someone calls me with a problem, I'll go look at it, and then I can better articulate it to the mayor or his staff, and they can decide who actually should be out there, whether it should be the street department or whoever, engineering department or whoever, to address that problem.
We got about 2 minutes.
Okay. Now, as far as the ADA accessibility on sidewalks, like I was saying, since I got on the council, there was an order. It was before I was on the council, but there was a federal judge ordered the city to spend a minimum of $250,000 or more a year getting our sidewalks ADA compliant. And we did that. It took several years and a couple of extensions to do it, but the curb cuts, any sidewalk built today has to be built to ADA standards.
Okay.
But I don't think people, if it's not built where you need it, you really don't realize it because you're not looking at the whole city. But as you alluded to, I represent, so does the council and the mayor, the whole city. And the majority of our money spent on sidewalks, and we've spent millions and millions of dollars on them and continue to do it every year, are in North Jonesboro because we get more funding from CDBG and other areas, and they have to be spent in those areas that qualify. They are desperately needed. They're needed all over the place, but you only have a limited amount of funds, and unless somebody's willing to step up and say, hey, I want to vote a tax increase so we can do this in a faster manner, it's not going to happen. We allocate based on, and that's another thing. Again, if you live on Patrick, you're probably going to say, well, it's a desperate need. We need these. And yes, it's needed. But if you live on South Caraway Road, they're hollering the same thing. They've got the same conditions, deep ditches. But you look back and you say, okay, and city engineers do this. There's 2,800 car trips a day, maybe a few more on Patrick. South Caraway Road has 15,500. So when you ask, well, why did you guys decide to work on South Caraway instead of North Patrick? As well, it's again driven by use. The demand exceeds for 15,500 car trips, and the people that walk on that, there's a greater need there than there was on Patrick. But you try to incorporate everybody into the plan. It's just the engineers have to prioritize their projects based on the funds we have available. And as you said again, and it is true, it's money. It's just funding. I wish we had all the money in the world. We could do everything. We could do it all right now. But you have to plan, and you have to work that plan. And a lot of, like I said, everybody's impatient, but you just have to do what you can when you can do it, and try to accommodate the most need for everybody.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in to Community Conversations. I hope everyone has a great day, and go back and watch all of the videos.
Thank you for listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily